Well, hey, welcome back to Figure It Out. I am neck deep in foam and xenomorphs, so let's get this build finished. So the first thing I wanted to do was go ahead and get some plaster on these seams. Let's go ahead and eliminate any of the gaps in the wood and the foam. So just a little finger brush and getting it pressed into all the joints. Of course, after it dries, you've got to take some time and sand it. So I spent a little time getting all the excess plaster off, sanding that landing gear nice and smooth. You know, I just found some stuff in the garage and began to add the embellishments across the top. It's supposed to look like a bunch of wires and pipes. That gray material, the gray wire looking stuff, is just some spline that I had left over from fixing our screens. The red, those are straws from Sonic. So just I got a bunch of junk and just started finding shapes that I particularly liked and started gluing it on the tops of these landing gear. Once I got all those shapes glued up, then of course we got to take our Mod Podge and black paint that we combine and paint the whole structure to give it some strength, kind of shore up that foam and make it all uniform, one color. What I'm doing here is I'm making the door, and the door has these insets that I carefully cut out. You can see them there on the right, and then I'm just sort of dirtying up the interior portions by scratching my X-Acto knife sideways. It creates this very interesting pattern, very random pattern as I scrape it sideways, but I really thought it turned out well once I got it all sculpted. And then once I got that done, I just began to add, again, some additional embellishments to the inside of the door. Again, the door has all these pipes and wires, so more hot glue of that screen spline and some other stuff that I just stuck down in the door to make it look sci-fi. Now I've got the door done, I'm just going to start gluing up the pieces to the interior of the diorama. Have something to glue the walls up against, these grid walls. So got a little piece in the back. Now I'm just going to hot glue the grid walls in place and then continue to add the additional pieces on the top end of the diorama. In the pictures you can see there are some like metal girders that run across the top of the wall and up to the ceiling, and so I'm going to add those in this step. Eventually what I'll do is take my hot knife and I'll just burn some holes in these to make them look like metal girders from the picture, which had some spaces in them. If we look to the back wall, you can see there are some lines and shields, so I'm going to work on both of those things now. To create the line effect, it looks like some pipes running up the wall. I just got some, they're actually just stir sticks, plastic stir sticks for coffee. I just pushed them together and I'm going to glue them very straight to make them look like pipes, and then I have these little round shield pieces that I've glued up that I'm going to put on the back wall themselves. Now again, a little Mod Podge and black paint so that we can have that as our primer and strengthen all that XPS foam. You can see I've also gone ahead and plastered the seams as well. In the movie, the landing gear was all painted gold. Ridley Scott wanted this to look like a temple, and so he painted all the landing gear gold, so I'm going to do that now. I've got a couple of the boxes that are to go in the back of the diorama. This is where they hid the lights in the landing gear room as well. And so those were kind of a darker metallic color. So I've got this copper looking metallic color I'm going to try. And then I'm going to paint the landing gear this gold color. It's obviously way too bright as far as the gold is concerned, so I've got to mute it. I tried a little bit of dark wash, but it's not muting it enough, so I'm just diluting some black paint now with a little bit of water and brushing it over, and it's doing a pretty good job, actually a pretty great job in making this look like this dirty gold that you might see in the movie. And then the rest of the walls are that darker metallic paint, so I'm going to come back and paint the door and the grid and the back walls, all that metallic color. The girders and the rest of the walls themselves in the upper part just need to get a little rust color put on them. So I'm working to use that same copper paint, but I'm going to dilute it and brush it on to make it look like this really rusted out space. This is going to be very dark once the lights are put in. And speaking of lights, you can see there's lights from the top shining down as well as lights at the very bottom shining up on the walls. So we're going to start wiring now. So I know I need a 12-volt battery pack for these 12-volt lights that I have. We're going to run that to a switch, and then I've got 6 lights. Light number 1 is yellow. The second light is going to be white. That's going to be at the very top. Light 3 is at the far back. It's yellow. Then I'm going to run down the bottom to the wall. That'll be yellow. The 5th light is actually going to be blue. It's going to be in the far corner. And then the last light will also be yellow. And so just to map it out, we got to go positive to the switch from the battery pack, and then all the way through the positive to the light, and then the negatives will all be put together back to the battery pack. But I got to wire them in a different order than I have them mapped out, and so we're going to actually start from the farthest light and go backwards to the battery pack. So I've got the lights drilled in place and the wiring tails from the light bulbs themselves sticking out the back of the diorama, and I'm going to solder the wires up and trace them all the way back to the battery pack. I don't need to show you all the soldering, but I just wanted to give you kind of an example of what this looks like kind of after the fact, as I've been trying to plan on how to wire, just coming off the back of the diorama and putting the wires all across the back. I'm going to cover all these wires though in that black foam board once I get it all down, and just create some channels with the foam board. So I'm going to cut out the foam board here and basically sheathe the entire project in this black foam board to hide all the wires, to have a place where the switch can be. And so I'm just going to cut out this front panel. I've already got the side panels glued on, and this is just me gluing on the one of the front panels. So it kind of cleans up all the glue edges, make sure that no seams are showing. And there you can see the wiring as I'm gluing on the top. And I like to cut the channels out of that foam board so that it sort of fits down on top of itself. Of course, in the scene we have Jonesy. If you watch the movie, you see Jonesy's the cat. So I found a little cupcake topper, that's what that is, and decided to paint him up yellow and give him his eyeballs and all that. So now I'm going to glue down the boxes that are in the back of the diorama itself. You see Jonesy's already back there hiding behind one of the boxes. And this sort of covers the lights and has them where they just play along the walls themselves. So you don't actually see the bulb once you get them all turned on. They're hidden by those boxes, just like they were in the movie. Now all we got to do is put the figures in place and we can start taking some pictures. All right, so what did we figure out about this particular build? Well, I would say from the start, any build that has to do with sci-fi or like I said in the last video, some real precise edges. I mean, I need some better tools. I know I could do better if I had like one of the Proxxon wire tables, the hot wire tables, something where I could get some really straight lines with my cuts. I think I struggle with that in this particular build quite a bit, not having the right tools for the job. I think maybe a little more experience on my part. If I would maybe a year from now build something like this, I know that I would be a little bit more accomplished in the craft to be able to do it a little bit better than what I did. It's not a terrible job, but I can see it up close and I know the different flaws and things. Another thing I learned was for something this large, wrapping it in this foam board maybe was not the best thing. On the little builds that I've done, I've kind of blocked off the edges using this foam board, and I'll cut the foam out and fold the paper down, and it looks pretty good on some other builds, but this one not so much. There's just a lot to cover. I think I would prefer to maybe hide the glue edges and do it a different way next time. So if you guys have any suggestions on ways to wrap these to make it look good, I would be glad to hear that in the comments. You know, there are some good things about the build though that I really like. I really felt like that the landing gear pieces, these gold pieces, turned out really good, much better than I anticipated. You know, instead of using just a dark wash and ink wash, but actually just diluting paint and painting over it to mute that gold color, it worked really well. It looks really great up close as well. I do like the chains hanging down. I think the lighting turned out really good. I think the perspective was the right move. At the very beginning of the build, once I kind of started putting some stuff in places, I had to take a step back and reboot because it just, where I was going to put the figures in the original diorama just wasn't going to work. And so this diorama is intended, even though it's a square diorama, it's intended to be viewed from this front point and looking in to the diorama itself, and that's where you'll see most of the pictures that I take on this. So, well, thanks for watching this video. Thanks for joining me on both parts, the first part and second part. Please take a minute and subscribe to the channel. That's a huge help. And also like the video. I appreciate that too. Thanks for watching Figure It Out.